The fuel we have will take us 2.6 days. We've placed order for fuel, but it has to be paid. We've procured some fuel on credit and working with the Ministry of Finance to pay. But the truth is that the Ministry of Finance also has its limits. And so we'll be going to Cabinet to discuss how we can improve on the sector. And that is why we are pushing for some private sector participation in ECG's operations. ECG is unable to collect all the monies. And so you're having a deficit of about 2 billion cedis every month when it comes to ECG's collections. When you add that deficit and you add the fuel, which is not part of the pass-through, you are looking at over 30 billion. Car Power has just sent us a letter that by 18th, they will shut down the plant because we owe them more than $400 million. IPPs alone, we owe them $1.7 billion.
That's the Minister for Energy and Green Transition. The ECG has a total liability debt, 68 billion Ghana cedis. 68 billion Ghana cedis. Ghana Water Company, their debt to ECG, 1 billion in 7 months. The total debt owed to independent power producers, IPPs, 1.73 billion, not Ghana cedis, US dollars. And as you heard the minister, this is a critical situation we find ourselves in. He says we require about 1.1 billion US dollars to procure liquid fuel alone. Unfortunately, the liquid fuel is not part of the tariff structure, and that has to be paid by the central government. Car Power says that by 18th, check today's date, 17th, by 18th of this month, that's tomorrow, they will shut down the plant because we owe them more than 400 million US dollars. IPPs alone, we owe, as I said earlier, 1.7 billion US alone. He says that is a serious situation. Well, they appear to say there's some lifeline we are getting because through the help of the Ministry of Finance, we've been able to procure 450,000 barrels of light crude oil, and this can stretch us for quite a while. But why must we live in panic that we can't get power almost all the time? Why should we be in such a situation? Join us now. My guests right here in the studio. We have right by me Professor Godfrey Bokwing, economist and professor of finance, University of Ghana. Of course, remember, we'll be dealing with the city's miracle, quote-unquote miracle. Want to find out if it's just a blip or this is engineered, to last, and to last for how long. You've heard Professor Bokwing already suggesting that this is not a permanent thing as is being suggested. We also have in the studio Richard Anyagba. He's Director of Communications of the New Patriotic Party. My good friend, Dr. John Osai Kwapong, the man who works with the data.
Yes.
Afrobarometer is here with us. Democracy and Development Fellow at CDD. Thank you very much. Don't recall the last time we were privileged to have you live in studio. Often it's either you are far away out of this country, in Trump country. Yeah. Good to have you, Prof.
Thank you very much.
Right. And also joining us, and look, on my Facebook page, I've seen all of you lambasting us. But where is NDC representative? You're going to talk about all of these things and you're going to crucify Sami Jemfi and there's no NDC representative. Professor Sharif Mahmoud Khalid is here, economic advisor to the Vice President. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Great. Okay, so let's go straight to energy because I don't want to sleep in darkness and I don't want us to have a situation where jobs are lost and people are dying because of a Dumsor sort of situation. What's your appreciation of the situation, Prof. Bokwing, and what's the salvation?
Look, I've said it before, that apart from irresponsible mining, including illegal mining, what causes me sleepless nights is the energy sector. We have seen, given the two main political parties that have had opportunity to manage that sector, that we can no longer do politics with it. We've seen the track record of the NDC, run up to 2016. We've seen the MPP come. We've seen the challenges and all of that. We've seen NDC back. Clearly, they are all saying the same thing. There are fundamental issues that needs to be resolved. And I think that gives me comfort, because we are at the stage where politicization doesn't help. Now, what is the issue? If you look at, in terms of distribution losses, the distribution losses on the books of ECG is way above the world average. That is not sustainable.
You understand, about some 40%, is it?
It's very high. So
that's like criminal.
Yeah, so if you are doing 15%, it's very high. So with that level of losses, you cannot, in economics, you cannot talk about realistic pricing. You cannot pass on all those losses to the ultimate consumer. No. Then again, you want to look at collection losses. Collection losses, we are looking at close to 15%. Again, that's above world average. It's not sustainable. Apart from that, you also want to look at the tariff gaps in terms of the pricing formula and all of that. If you put all of these things, then apart from that, you also see that there are ministries, department, agencies, and you heard the minister saying that it's about time ministry, department, agencies take responsibility for their energy consumption.
Right.
Then you also want to add onto that sensitive installations of government, where they don't pay the electricity bill and all of that. Somebody once reminded me that, have I noticed where ice blocks come from in this country for pure water sellers? Somebody said probably it's from police stations, it's from whatever, where. I don't know. I'm not saying it's true. I'm saying somebody right. just whispered to me.
You see the deep freezers
yeah.
at the back of their homes. You know, yes. They are very dilapidated, often, courtesies.
So somebody reminded me. I've not been able to verify myself. So if you put all these sensitive installations that are not paying for the electricity consumption, ministries, department, agencies, and some educational institutions, if you put all these things together, there is no way we can see a future in this direction. So what is the way forward? And I'm seeing why the upbeat from government side is so strong. Here you have a government that is talking about 24-hour economy. You are not even getting power for your 8-hour economy, right? Cycle that we are running. And you are talking about 24-hour economy. So I suppose
they'll regret that particular promise, because it doesn't look like they can fulfill it. Anyway, back to the main subject.
I mean, sometimes a good leader needs to tickle people a bit. It doesn't mean you accomplish that, right? So, said that, of course. So I believe they will make some progress, progressively. So if you put all these things together and you look at internal issues with ECG, with procurement, management, interference, and all of that, I think we are at a point where I believe we should all support government in some kind of a private sector participation in the downstream distribution. And I think that may be different from saying we are selling ECG. Government can still be the sole shareholder of ECG, but we should be able to invite private sector in the distribution of power and collection, which will also require the private sector to bring in capital and also bring in private sector efficiency in all of that. But on this current model, I don't think that it is sustainable. And I believe that there are structural reforms under the IMF-supported program with respect to how ECG ought to be managed. And there are clear indicators that government has to meet as part of our ongoing IMF-supported program. I know Cabinet has to take a decision on ECG in terms of private sector participation, and I believe that government must communicate this clearly to Ghanaians That is different from selling ECG as a company. ECG can still be a holding company, wholly owned by government of Ghana, but I think we should be able to invite private sector participation.
As always, the staff are against it. They don't want to hear it.
Change will be resisted because people want to preserve their comfort zone. And remember,
they have the experience of the PDS scam.
But even if you look at the PDS, the first few months and all of that, in terms of collection effort and the rest of them, because you see, when you see rots, you see inefficiency, it is possible some people are benefiting from it. It's possible some people's lifestyle is offloaded.
You should hear the managers talk about how internally people appear to hijack and tweak some meter systems and all of that. It's like a den of thieves.
Yeah, and I think that we need to break that. And I believe that, and I'm calling on Ghanaians, that we need to rally behind government. This is not politics. When your power goes off, it doesn't discriminate. And in fact, recently we were in Kumasi. I mean, and it was that terrible. I've been living at University of Ghana, so I didn't really get to experience it. When I stepped, I was like, what is happening here? Is that what you guys go through every night and all of that? It was that bad, please. It was that bad. So please, let's do away with the politics. I'm expecting the minority in parliament because a lot of the reforms for which the current minister is implementing actually started with the previous administration as part of the IMF-supported program and the structural benchmarks about reforming the energy sector. And I think we need to do that so that we can have reliable, predictable power for our industrial uptake and the rest of them. And I think that beyond that, once we are able to invite the private sector participation, the idea of procurement abuse and all of that will be minimized because ECG then probably could be a holding company, right? And then this private, and of course, government can decide whether they want to offload all of that to a single private sector or probably maybe 4 or so of them and create some kind of internal competition. I will favor that as well, rather than offloading all of that to just one entity and all of that and see how the management can go. But seriously, Ghana needs help. And then again, you see from the budget, you see the minister saying that they need about $1.1 billion and the ministry, because you see, from the ministry point of view, they are administering what we call a shock therapy. They are controlling expenditure as much as possible. So with all this coming up, it's very difficult to get the minister to just quickly play along because it has implication in terms of the stability
of the city.
We want to have. Yeah, because that is what is playing out in the stability.
We'll get there. So, Prof, hold on there quickly.
Thank you.
Let me go on Zoom and speak to Engineer Harriet Amisa Arthur, co-founder and executive partner, Arthur Energy Africa. A friend of mine, Chubu Esiako, says a lot of the ministries won't even miss ECG if power is cut. A lot of their staff spend the day watching TV and doing very little work for which they are paid anyway. So let's not be that bothered. Right. So, Harriet, look, this debt, it doesn't look, it's like a black hole. It's like a bottomless pit. It goes up. It doesn't. We never are able to come out of it. Do you have any assurances, and what would be the basis for it that will come out of this situation?
Good morning to your panelists and your audience. Thank you for having me on your program today. Something is. I think what is happening to us is to be expected. If we continue to run the sector as we're running, then this should be our expectation. I mean, I think what we see as what we classify as a looming power crisis is not looming. It's been coming. It comes a day at a time. We consistently have not done what we needed to do, and that's why we're here today. Now, the debt is also increasing because we continue, as has been said, I heard the previous speaker talk about the losses in the sector, the operational inefficiencies, and so forth. And so that is just a cumulative effect that occasionally we see as our power is going off tomorrow. Then that's when we panic and we begin to do stuff. I think that if you look at what has been happening over decades now, the problems we're facing with our power sector is a combination of inaction on our part as Ghanaians.
It's a money problem. Did you say inaction? Is it not just a money problem?
It's not just a money problem.
Okay.
It's not just a money problem because when you buy a commodity and you sell it and you do not collect from the person you sold it to, then you don't expect to break even. I mean, maybe it's only in our power sector that we expect that if we don't account for the energy we bought, we can still somehow magically make the books work. So I think that's one of it. It's mainly is the inaction, because we need to track where our power goes. And if, for instance, there are sectors I had, as mentioning, the critical sectors and so forth, it should be it should be in our plan, and we should be intentional about it. If we decide as a policy in this country that all educational institutions are going to get free power, and all hospitals are going to get free power and so forth, then we do that. We quantify it. We know how much of it is going to these facilities. We identify how that gets paid for. Either the consumer is shared across so that every consumer contributes to those common facilities getting that power for free, or government decides that its subsidy goes into these areas because they are critical for government. But we can't just throw the power out there and assume that if we're losing it, it's because it went to the hospitals or it went to the educational institutions. Every unit of power that we buy has to be accounted for, so that the operators of the sector can tell us that, okay, now so much went into street lighting, so much went into educational institutions and so forth, and that's what we have. And then our uncollected bills are this much, and they can disaggregate it and tell us where those consumptions are. Who are the clients who consume this power, who may not, based on our policy or our plan, they're not entitled to enjoy free power, who are taking this power for free. And then you can also segregate and see what is technical losses or commercial losses. But as it is now, everything is lumped into the kitty, and we're just making a loss. And there's no business that runs that way. I mean, we're typically, most of the time when we're having these conversations, even only talking about network losses, be they technical or commercial. But there are operational losses in procurement and other areas that we haven't even looked at. I mean, today in the world, there's benchmarking. If we're buying capacity, we know roughly what it should be. If there's a reason why the cost of additional capacity to our system is going to be higher than the benchmarks we see, there has to be a reason for it. We know, for instance, that our countries in our parts of the world carry higher risk. But what is the risk factor and what was added as a reason of the risk? So that we know exactly what we've added to the, what should usually be how much it charges us. So we don't just leave it free floating and explain it away as, if the thing is costing X, we end up paying maybe 150%, and it's okay because this part of the world is expensive. So I'm saying that there's nothing that's happened to us that is not because of our action or inaction. This, and every time it's happening to us, is because of the way we've run this.
Okay.
And I think that we just need to begin to look at this as a business. And as much as we often talk about it as a social good, even if it's a social good, let's account for it and intentionally decide that we're giving it up. So, and then we can make plans to pay our debts on a more regular basis.
Okay, because you are joining us only on this subject and you're taking leave of us shortly, tell me, do you then see that things are being done to avoid putting us in this kind of, pressure and getting all of us to panic? And Professor Bokwing is here. He is not in government, but he says that is his headache. Why should that be his headache? I have a business. I run a law firm. When I put my plant on, that's too much I can't really afford. You are crying over your overheads all the time, and then these things come in. I remember 99, 2000, I entered the University of Legon. There were blackouts. University of Ghana, there were blackouts in the night. We had to go and sit by the banks to use their, genset lighting to read.
Wow.
Samson, I mean, what we're talking about is not just about our power sector. If we recognize that our power sector is such a critical component of our nation's well-being, okay, for generations to come, then we can no longer afford to play with it. Because as you're saying, just imagine a Ghana without power. Mm-hmm. Especially in today's world where everything runs on technology and needs electricity. Just imagine a Ghana without power. Now, a Ghana without reliable power is very, very close to a Ghana without power. And the reason is that you cannot plan anything. I mean, if you're seeking serious investors to come to our country who are looking at coming to invest good money, they're looking at recouping their money in no less than 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, and they're doing their due diligence on this country, they will have not just second thoughts, maybe third and fourth thoughts. Because you come and put your money in and the power doesn't come and you can't run and you have all kinds of issues and you just lose your money. So money will go where it finds a home. And right now, the way we're treating our power sector, it makes it difficult even for Ghanaians to invest in this.
So my question to you is that, are you seeing indications of the solutions?
I think that this government has an opportunity to do something different. And I'm saying that because it's just coming, and whether, in every business at the beginning of the year or getting towards the end of the year, you have an opportunity to reflect, to review what you've done in times past and see whether in the coming year or in the coming years you want to do something different. Many people have asked the question, can Ghanaians do it? But maybe the second question I would say we ask is, will we do it? So we've always said we know the problems, we have the solutions, we can do it, but we haven't done it, and maybe we won't do it. So maybe the question to ask is, who can do it for us so that we can move on from this point and get other things that need to be done in this country doing. I'm saying that my long answer to that is to come to the point that I think it's time to actually have that honest conversation. And I'm happy to say that I'm happy that that conversation is being had right now to look at what are the options on the table and which one do we want to choose to change the arrangements for operating the sector so that the sector can function quietly, reliably, dependably, so we can create value. At the moment, all we do is a critical sector like the energy sector is always on the operating table.
Okay.
And because of that, we never get to do what we have to do with the energy that it provides. So, something I'm saying that the government has started taking the steps.
You vote for private sector involvement?
Sure.
All right.
And not just private sector involvement. I think the assumption that just because it's private makes it much, much better needs to be looked at. I think the way in which we design the contract, who we select, the competency, and our ability to penalize and fire if we need to is important.
Okay.
So that when we move from this current arrangement, we don't just jump into private sector participation.
Thank you.
And end up with the same thing.
Thank you very much. At least we saw in Ghana Water, right? It didn't work. So, Prof, and I'm referring to Dr. Osai Papon here. As you have heard so far, taking off the ministries, education institutions, some parts of hospitals, as in the places that government is supposed to show social responsibility. Well, they've been promising us on the campaign, they'll give us free education, free that. Maybe it should be free electricity instead, right? Why can't they do these common things? You go to Nigeria, very bad. I've had the opportunity to stay in Nigeria different times for more than a week or two. In South Africa, they also have this situation. They seem to have managed it in a certain way that the power you get, the wattage or voltage you get is at a certain level and so on. Our governments can't take care of the bills for free.
Good morning, Samson. Once again, good morning to everybody else. But if government has to give it to us for free, someone still has to pay for it, right? So whether directly or indirectly, it would still cost someone. But as I listen to Prof...
So our taxes are not enough?
Well, it takes more than, but as I listen to Prof and Madam Harriet, you realize that there are some fundamental structural issues in the energy sector that would take some tough policy choices to resolve. In fact, I recall when the former Energy Minister, Boakye Agyarko, was being vetted in 2017. I listened to the vetting, and as he explained all of the issues, the challenges, I walked away saying, you can't put off any longer making certain painful but necessary choices in the energy sector. So, of course, I'm not an energy sector expert, but the more I was gleaning from it, that was what I was walking away with. 17, 18 years down the line, those painful choices have not been made. And it appears that we are able to manage it, in cycles, right? Because even if I think back to, I think I was in class 4, so maybe around 84, 85.
Understand, we have this slight problem with your microphone. So you pause there.
Okay.
I will return to you. So, Prof. Khalid, the question is, if governance is just about like running a business, and governments come in and all they know is increase things, adjust, then, any dummy can run a government. What's going on that you sound so convincing, we hand you power, you come in less than 5 months, and you put us in a panic mode. Actually, from the very day the president took over, we heard that we were not going to get electricity the next night or so.
Well, but something, to be fair, stemming from your own introduction, in your acts of me of how we spoke very well as maybe a party in opposition, we've been given power, and just a day or two, we're already facing imminent power crisis. And 5 months down the line, we are facing another imminent power crisis. Let's look at it from a project management lens, as you'd say. A fair point to say is that it tells you that there's been a systematic...
The researcher and you will talk about the two of you. Of course, Professor.
Well, I'm trying to be as depolitical as possible as I am. So I think that we should rather be patting the government at the back, because if a day after taking office there were supposed to be imminent power crisis, which never happened, we've been weathering the storm as far as it's concerned. But what it tells you is that it's a reflection of a systemic crisis that has been existing for far too long. Because 5 months down the line, it's been rearing its ugly heads. Even if you are fixing the problem with a magic wand, you'll still face all of these problems. And that's exactly what we are. For me, sitting from the back room, I see real commitment from the president and the energy minister. And to them, it's a deja vu, because remember 2016 power crisis, which led to the excess capacity that he handed over to the previous government. And back then, Minister Jinapor was in charge of power as a minister. So he's seen it all. It's all come back to him after inheriting a government that have allowed these systemic issues to happen. But several issues have been happening around this, which I think that we all need to speak to, again, dispassionately. As part of our research agenda, we are not just having stick in plaster solutions. We're looking at long-term solutions as far as power is concerned and the distribution of it. We talk about the cash waterfall mechanism, which we've been struggling to actually fit in. There are instances, classic example, where we run a farm where we are struggling to call for, look, can you come for the bills? What bill would you issue us this month? And we have that, we are uncertain about it. At the end of the day, they come and say, you have 5,000 to pay. It comes another month. So it tells you that the grid or the billing system is still not as efficient as it should be. Now, what we need to ask ourselves as a government or managers is that, what are we doing to fix this problem? We all know politicization. Growing up, I didn't care who the ECG boss was. That's how depolitical it was. Nobody cared a hoot who was running or manning ECG. But today it's become a political...
Maybe you were not as politically aware as today.
We were political. Can you count the last ECG bosses since the 80s, probably to the early 2000s? It'll be difficult. We're all politically aware about all of this. But this time around, we have people lobbying for it, among other issues. Right. Amidst this crisis, we had an investment banker who was board chair of ECG, where we had debts to pay and, among other issues, sharing motorbikes to the police. Was that a priority? So this is the politics. I'm not trying to box it to say, but we must accept the politicization of it and moving forward how to fix it. But for me, I think the new appointment, the acting MD there now, is sort of an indication of the fact that it's probably being depoliticized. Because if he's a very shrewd administrator from MEDA, from his experience, and if you engage him, I have been in ECG in the last couple of years mediating, and it's quite harrowing because when I walk into the mediation room to ask, okay, you have these debtors, can we pay them so we can have the system running smoothly, right? I'm brought out a list of debts ECG has to pay. And I look at their budget allocation. Then I ask myself, what am I really going to negotiate for? Because there's no headroom to even have a full negotiation as to which IPP should have what, which billing agency should have X, and they also have, service providers they need to pay. At a certain point, they are also threatened to such an extent that there are even tensions where people think, okay, these power providers or independent power providers are trying to sabotage the system.
That's right.
Sometimes they are not, because it is the challenges that we face. But we see a president and a minister who are head on the job, because 5 months down the line, to put the blame on the government, I think would be a very unfair one. Right. Even if you had a magic one to fix the situation, it will take days to fix the structural situation, bailing situation.
Before you took over, we're not put in this panic situation almost every day.
No, but before we took over, you were refused, a timetable on Dumsor being published. Was that not the case? So it tells you an imminent crisis was in place, except we didn't face it head on or admit that there was one. Today, at least, you have the minister on the screen speaking to you on a daily basis, by the second base, by the minute base, that this is where we are at this. This is how much crude we're trying to get in. And this is what the Ministry of Finance is doing to support that. And I think that these are things that I'm not saying they are giving us the proper solutions. But if you understand energy very well, especially power and its distribution, with this systemic problem that I've been left, it will take a very long time too. And the communication of it for me is very important. We may do A, B, C, D all around, but look at power theft around, power losses, trying to consolidate all of this. Even revenue generation, the collection of it, how centralized it is also another problem. So it's ECG is a behemoth. It's a beast in and of itself.
What do you tell Iraba? She says that you should have maintained the betting tax to take care of some of these things.
Samson, I'm always put in a fix when I'm asked this question because
you have removed taxes that was giving us money.
A nuisance tax, and we all agree. Prof would agree with me. It was a nuisance tax. That one we can run away from. Apart from the fact that I'm a Muslim and anti-betting tax, but you look at it from a structural perspective.
My view about betting tax is different.
Yeah, Muslim then should be supporting the tax.
No, but you see,
to discourage it. But that's not a substantive matter.
Yeah.
So the question now is, from where you sit, even though I know your answer will be in the affirmative.
Yes.
Are you assured that we will resolve this problem once and for all?
At the pace.
What gives you that assurance?
The president's commitment gives me that, if it's anything to go by, which I believe it is something to go by.
His commitment to education led to Education Forum. Yes. Commitment to Constitution led to a Constitution Review Commission. Yeah. Energy, we don't have that, have we?
Well, but several committees have been put. You remember, this is a very technical
area. The minister.
Yeah, and remember, this is a very technical area, right? And he has confidence in his minister to allow him to say, okay, these are the shortfalls we need, technical committees. Can we go back to the stakeholder market and bring them together? So a couple of stakeholders are working. It's just about connecting the synergies. And you see him mention, I just returned from the CEO Africa Forum in Abidjan.
He was there.
He was there.
He spoke about this same situation.
So if he's even speaking about it on international platforms, it tells you how committed he is, holding his own feet to the fire as far as solving our power crisis.
Okay, let's return to Prof. Prof, the next campaign, I'm going to be tasking the MPP NDC. If they can give me free power, I'll vote for them.
Oh, they can promise. That's not a problem.
Richard has a jet set vehicle. He might probably drive to the house.
Right. Yeah,
But
Prof.
then if they promise you that free power, they'll still have to pay for it. But it looks like, as we talk about these fundamental structural issues, one of the key things that also has to be looked at least from my layman's perspective, is the entire value chain, identifying the various fault lines along those value chains and figure out what are the appropriate policy responses and choices along those fault lines. One of the things that I'm still not clear about or continues to baffle me is the energy sector debt. Because government to government, you hear two narratives. There's a huge energy sector debt, and then at some point, it's one of our achievements is we've cleared the energy sector debt. And then there's another government, and then you hear that narrative of energy sector debt accumulated, we've cleared it. So we keep going, through these cycles of we accumulate, we pay off.
Except in the last few regimes, they have not cleared. Nobody has cleared energy sector debt.
But I do remember statements here and there about how much of the energy sector debt at least has been paid down. So you go through that cycle of we accumulate, we either pay down, we pay off, and then it re-emerges.
So for 8 years, Akufo-Addo left us with some 2 billion, and they are continuing from there.
Right. So which tells us
the
that
energy sector, the ESLA, how it was managed in the last couple of years, really defeat the very purpose of that. That also contributed to that. We have to even restructure the ESLA bond and all of that. I think that something fundamentally shifted.
So whatever is driving these issues, because ultimately, like you said, the absence of power and these power challenges also has political implications for the government in power. We all remember one of the things that current President John Mahama had to face back during his first term when there was the energy sector crisis, and how that became one of the issues used against him. Of course, I have to quote Afrobarometer, right? I was looking at the numbers here.
Always advertising Afrobarometer.
And I
gain your credibility.
Exactly, and back then you could see that the political implications were not pretty. Only 23% rated the government's handling of the energy sector in terms of providing reliable electricity favorably. Yes, by the time we got to 2016 and CDD Ghana did its 2 pre-election polls, it improved. By the October one, Dumsor was now not ranking as a key issue that was going to drive voters to the poll. But you also cannot address the policy part of this challenge without also paying attention to the politics part, because that is where citizens would judge whether you've been able to satisfactorily address the issues, or not.
You were hopeful that Boakye Janko would do this. And I asked the question earlier, how many years down the line? Well, the reasons for which, they pushed him out, very ridiculous. He clearly, had a handle of the situation, and he would have done a great job. But the politics, he was thrown out. We are here. Do you see any indications that what you felt then, the painful measures that had to be taken, they are being contemplated or being taken at all?
So let me use this let me give you this context for my answer. So I remember in 2017, the same hope that I had as I listened to Boakye Janko was the same hope that I had. I remember writing a nice piece about former finance minister Ken Ofori-Atta in terms of his answers, the way he was thinking about fiscal issues, gave me a lot of hope. So I remember when Honorable Atuforsen was nominated and was going to his vetting, all I said was, the last time I spoke, so highly about such a situation, my heart got broken. So, Honorable
We're not the only one, please.
Yes, Honorable Atufo, and I'm just going to say all the best. Don't break our hearts. So it's the same thing. I've watched Honorable John Jinapor a lot. I've followed his submissions even before they came into power on Good Morning Ghana, etc., etc. So I understand and I recognize that he has a full understanding and appreciation of the issues and the challenges. I just hope that for everything that he recognizes as the key challenges, he will be able to impress upon this government as the substantive minister in that sector to lead us to a place where we can make those painful choices and get it right.
Okay, thank you. I'm coming to Richard now, so we take our final comment on this before we move on to the CD, because they seem to be, interrelated. As you understand, there may be a certain deliberate, posturing, because if you release too much money, the CD may suffer. But let me speak to Timoteis Nyame, who's just joining us. Thank you, Timoteis Nyame. You are supposed to be the General Secretary of the POU, the Public Utilities, Workers' Union. Yeah. Hi, Timothy.
Good morning.
Right. What's the point for your intervention?
Okay, so good morning to all the listeners and viewers. I didn't follow the discussion from the beginning, but along the line, there were certain issues that we thought the union should be brought in to also make an input, so that the energy sector will not necessarily be as a result of the retail end problem. That's what I wanted to say. And then, of course, somebody was referring the point that it is as a result of illegalities being perpetrated by the staff.
Yeah, that's part of it. You deny that?
What I'm saying is that it's a whole system of operation. So when you have an organization of more than 6,000 staff, you cannot go brief for all of them. But having said that, that one should not be the cause for the inefficiency generally. So when you work the staff of the ECG as the cause, and don't forget that these staff are always on the field work, you open them to public ridiculed and attack. So you can say that fine, some of the issues may be attributed to certain misguided staff, which one, of course, when management also gets wind of it, they don't leave it like that. But to make it in general terms, they put the workers on the field to a certain risk. Also, I wanted to draw the attention. It's a whole system that we also know, and we also want to collaborate and ensure that this energy sector are hindered. So, in our position paper to the Honourable Minister, we stated all these items to the Minister, so that it should be dealt with. So I am appealing that when some discussions are being brought to bear, let's take our time to digest it very well, so that it doesn't open the workers who have the first.
Yeah, so nobody is saying, Mr. Nyame, nobody is saying that POU or your people are solely responsible. It's part of the problem. Yeah. Do you deny that inefficiencies in collection is part of the problem? Do you deny that there are rogues within the institution who have been caught and accused of tampering with the metering system and even the whole collection system? Because some of your managers have said this publicly.
Yes, and they have been there. You see, those people have been dealt with. And so I say, what I'm saying that there have been anybody is doing that. So we have a system of operation. When those people are identified, they are dealt with ruthlessly. So it shouldn't be looked as if the workers there are doing that in all totality. That's what I wanted to just say.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, and what is your main issue for being against the private sector participation? You have always been against it. Meanwhile, you continue to superintend over inefficiencies, because as we have been told, You can't find this kind of inefficiency anywhere in the world. And I said that's almost criminal that you can't account for as much as 40%. What's that?
So, thank you very much. Well, I wasn't a member of the panel club. You stated certain figures that have been brought up there. But they are there for discussion and the records are there. All I want to say is that we are not saying that bringing private sector participation in a government institution should be not. But it's not. We have been where I in the private. Then you are sitting the data in the end. Then you are where women of
unfortunately, your line is very terrible, but thank you for your intervention nonetheless. Timoteis Nyame is the General Secretary of POU, the Public Utilities Workers Union. Yes, Richard.
Well, good morning to my colleagues and yourself. I think the energy sector matters are largely one that we have talked about repeatedly. But the problems there are presently largely inefficiencies that have been talked about to do with the value chain from generation, transmission, distribution, and consumption. So in that chain there are challenges there that needs to be dealt with. So all the players in that chain need to do their work well. And the terminal end, the distribution, ECG will have to up its game. Currently, I think their losses are monthly about some 2 billion cedis. That's sinful. Consumption also.
I just did a quick Google, and I'm reading from graphic. ECG suffers 10.21 billion loss in 2022. Yeah. I mean, how does any company survive from things like this?
It's egregious. And if you look also at the consumption and also a lot of leakages there, which again you can attribute to ECG as well, because that's their business. They're supposed to see to it that people who are getting power are getting it in a manner that they can account for it in terms of paying for it to them. And so that's a challenge there. But I think that, one of the problems is inefficiency. But the other bit is pricing, which has been talked about widely, that it reflects cost of production. And also, I argue that it's leadership, but when it comes to the NDC, it is contractual and is politics. You see, I have not come to settle in my mind why we signed a power purchase agreement where we agree with people that would provide them fuel, okay, which is not to be recovered in terms of the pricing, and that all you would do as an IPP, come, bring your equipment, generate power for us, we'll provide the fuel for you, and then you just bill us. I mean, I don't know who does that. It's sinful. In fact, if I remember, I think the World Bank commentary on this matter is to the extent that it's expensive and it's wrong to sign such power purchase agreement. That's the problem. That, for me, is the problem. Take away the inefficiencies of ECG and the rest of the matters that we've talked about. That is a problem.
Yeah, the World Bank did fault them. And when you came in 2016, this became a major thing in 2017. Yeah. You set up a committee, you remember Philip Addison and the rest of them, all of them there. So should we still be talking about this in 2025?
Yes. Yeah, we should be. But you see, the MPP government did what it could to deal with some of the elements of the contract, which is to the extent of the take-or-pay element of it. But this aspect of fuel is entrenched, because that's fundamental to the agreement to come. You understand what I'm saying? So if you're saying that certainly we are not going to provide fuel again, and the pricing and everything else will be considered. But meanwhile, the pricing already is high. when we are providing the fuel.
And we can resolve that in 8 years?
Well, I don't know. I mean, the only way you could have resolved it is to build your own capacity to be able to produce or generate, and then you tell them, we can't live by this.
They are talking about another gas entity. They just started setting up a committee to work at that.
Right.
So they are being a lot more forward-looking than you have done.
Well, I'm saying that, so we'll get to that one.
Because gas is cheaper.
Yes, but I'm saying that the first leg is that the contract is bad. That has put us in this situation. Because right now, as we're talking, you need about 1.7 billion, right, to pay the IPPs. But on the side of that, you need some 1.1 billion to get fuel. So assuming that they had to provide their own fuel, you have that 1.1
It's okay,
billion.
you are making the problem statement. We know that ECG,
but I'm just saying
ECG is recording, they say, $67 million, dollars in loss in revenue every month. We are not interested in the problem statement.
No, we should be.
We're looking at the solution now.
Yes, no, but you see, we should be interested in that problem statement because those who brought about the problem are in power. So that they must realize what they have created is coming down back to haunt them. Now, perhaps, maybe they can have
They brought about a problem that we gave you the opportunity to resolve because you said you could resolve it in 80 years. You're still saying we should blame them?
Well, but you can be pardoned. If you inherit a bad problem and you couldn't solve it, the person who created it is there. You tell him to solve the problem.
Come on, Richard.
But I think the point I want to make there is that now, we should be holistic about the approach, right? To say that, can we open the doors for that conversation? To say that, look, how can we look at this? If not, then let's look at the per kilowatt rate at which they are selling.
Do you see that they have opened the doors for that conversation? Do you see that they are proffering solutions, including bringing on another gas?
No, I'll come to that. That's separate from the contractual matter. So I guess that's fundamental matter that must be looked at. That conversation should be broached with the IPPs so we see how we can deal with that. Because all these threats they have been issuing will shut down, We are providing you fuel. Why are you shutting down against what? Is it because you don't have fuel? We are providing it. And our minister is causing us all panic by saying he can't get money to buy fuel. Now managed to get some, and you are saying you're going to shut down, right? So the resolution of the matter is on the back of the fuel being available or just still about their money. So they are taking us for a ride, in my view, okay, because they've managed to rip us off in that contract. But you see, the matter to do with the next, and I think that the problems are known, so how we're dealing with it is key. So the gas plants that they have a committee, and I learned about it yesterday, it's good. But when Atuabo was coming, that was the conversation, right? When Atuabo comes, all these IPPs that have been signed would have access to gas, and therefore the cost of electricity will be low. But when it happened, what happened? The infrastructure to take the gas to them was not there. So are we building the gas plant again before we are looking at how we take the gas to the plants? Are they being done concurrently, or they've been done, exclusively? So are we building the gas plant before we see how it gets there? That means it's going to take forever long to be able to even complete the gas plant and then get the gas to go to the plant.
Since we are in the process, as in the state is in the process, I think this is a suggestion you are making, and they would definitely factor it.
So that's long term. Long term. It's not even immediate. It's long term. The present challenge that we face, really, I think that the government can open the door to this contractual conversation with the IPPs. I think that will really give us some space to have a conversation about how we bring the price down.
Okay.
It is too high, and then on the back of that, the threat that comes. And then the substantial matter, which I believe, something I think across the table along here, everybody will agree that ECG can begin to do something about these things now, in terms of their recovery rate, even the transmission end, all the transmission losses there, we can do a bit more. I think at the average, it's about 8-9%. Ours is very high. So there's a need for us to be able to look at that front also and see what we can do.
Right.
And the conversation, briefly, the conversation about private participation and all that, I have a very firm position that we shouldn't go in that direction. The only way maybe private intervention makes sense to me is that open up the space to the extent that there'll be a private person that comes in, or a private company that comes in from generation to distribution. We can have a private interplay there that brings real competition, so that ECG will sit up.
Now they are talking about the collection site, which
yes, that one for me is, I'm talking about from generation all the way to distribution.
Entire value chain.
Entire value chain. If you open it up, that.
But the people are against it.
Which people?
They are the ECG staff and all. They are vehemently against it.
Well, that would not be up to them.
I think from generation, there's some level of
privatization, or even with billing system.
Right.
No, I'm saying,
Even with billing systems.
There's one off-taker.
In the value chain.
In all of this, there's one off-taker whose inefficiency affects all the back end.
Right.
To generation. ECG. Yeah. So I think that the approach government has adopted is that let's look at that off-taker. Because if you look at the cash waterfall mechanism, that is also not being followed and all of that. So you want to look at where does the problem cluster. Can we begin to look at it from that point?
Right.
And if you pick where the problem clusters, then the issue is ECG. How do we resolve that?
Right.
Because to reduce the distribution losses and all of that, you need a considerable level of investment. Government doesn't have that fiscal space.
This is what Samson took to
We have two other issues to canvass, even though each one of them may have a certain, level of importance.
I haven't landed.
Okay, finish quickly. So then Khalid will get a minute before we take a break.
The point I'm making is that if you are really looking to sanitize the space and make it a bit less stressful as we're going through it, then open up the space. Let even private, individuals can come in, purchase power from the IPPs if that's what they are, or somebody can come in and set up from generation all the way through to consumption, so that people can choose in the market where to go to. So then ECG will be forced to be efficient, because if it's not, its prices will not be acceptable, and so therefore people will not choose. That's what is done elsewhere. But this whole thing about having to hand it, and government to hand that thing and have private thing to be able to abuse citizens, that for me I have a problem. Okay. But let's look at a model that will get people to come to the market, create real competition in the market to drive price down and increase efficiency.
Thank you.
My question to Richard is that,
is it a rhetorical question?
Well, he could answer it. It's rhetorical.
I don't have extra time for an answer.
No, but he made a point which is not even accurate about when they came into office, there was a looming energy crisis. There wasn't.
They told us right at the inauguration.
The minister corrected himself, adverting to say that what he said was in respect of HFO, but meanwhile, crude oil was there. Send power.
All right. You're correct about that. Let's hear you. Yeah.
My point is, when you came into office, are you saying you didn't sign a single power purchase agreement that involved fuel? So if you knew or had the magic one, why didn't you clean up from there? But we gave you a sheet in a Hume book actually to sink from in solving this problem, which was ESLA. What happened to ESLA? ESLA was benchmarked at 2.2 billion to the pension, right, with the sinking fund complementing it. We also agree. What happened? You collapsed both of it before you left office. So if we had left that in Mahama 1 to solve this problem.
They didn't collapse it. We had an extraordinary situation. And there was COVID,
it was tight
there was
for
Ukraine,
a reason. Which extraordinary situation demanded
we went bankrupt.
No. We'll come yes. You see, something. And again, within this power sector,
I may say you are doing politics. So let's hear Prof. Let me hear Prof before. Wait. Let me hear Prof. Yes, Prof. Prof, why are you saying no?
No, I think that the measures that were put in place from the NDC in terms of ESLA and the rest of if they had followed it, that would have considerably reduced the energy sector and the rest of them. But I think the approach the MPP government adopted, we've said it before, clearly went contrary to the original plan and all of that. And you could see the reason why, even when they said they should restructure ESLA, Bond and the rest of them, stakeholders were not happy and all of that. So I think that this whole thing vested interest in the management of the energy sector and all of that, even with procurement of fuel and all of that. Look, this is the problem. The heart of our problem is our heart. In how we everybody is looking at what they can get from all of this. And finally, what I want to say is that I'm happy with the energy sector, but I think we should change the narrative. I want to see a certain posture of we are fixing, we are on top of it.
That's right.
Rather than maybe lamentation, right? Because the president has signaled that I can fix this.
That's right.
And all of that, so that with the stability from the currency and all of that, the statement should be consolidating. in terms of how we build confidence in the economy broadly and all of that. So I think that part of it currently is a financial issue.
Right.
In terms of
so the president at the very beginning said, look, I have the track record. I've fixed this before and I'll fix it again. John Jinapro says that your lights will be on. That's all we want. We want to have
Let's
them
keep to
on.
that. Yeah.
Prof, please allow me to take a break, and then we come to Sidi.
And you take your
No, yeah, you haven't had a chance to conclude it.
You even moved a power plant. You moved the power plant. That was part of the excess capacity to Kumasi at an extraordinary cost.
Something
Right.
you have to allow this,
for me-
because if you allow it,
For me,
have
the
to
solution, one of the solutions,
you are in
which is
government,
an unpopular opinion.
you are in government,
in the economic
and you
forum,
have to be taking responsibility.
during the economic forum,
You are arguing
during the
against-
economic forum, it's only Togbe Afede who supported me in the room. Which I don't know if I can recruit Prof and Richard. I don't know where his point would be. Well, look, can we clean up ECG a bit? And
ECG means
What do you mean by clean up?
no, when we say clean it, you know, energy is one of the most viable commodities, right? Which is a very, as I say, it's very attractive.
Almost like water, we need it.
Right. So,
yeah.
when I say clean it up, by tightening the cash waterfall mechanism, trying to get all these structural problems, depoliticizing it, we missed it.
Why people are not acting?
Thank you.
we missed it.
Thank you. We take a break here. Richard, I'm sorry.
No, just briefly. You see, they are in government, and he's saying, "Can we clean it?" Who is it asking?
Okay. Thank you, gentlemen. Frank Anderson makes this statement, and I want you to hear the statement that one of our viewers is making from the UK. It says, after 68 years of independence, we should by now know that doing politics with critical sectors like energy, education, health hasn't helped us. These are critical sectors. Any serious-minded middle-income country should have a well-defined medium to long-term plan to ensure policy continuity and sustainability. Bipartisan approach with written commitments of stakeholders should be considered. Energy CSOs like Ben Boache and co can lead this approach so there is some level of trust and perceived independence. We'll take a quick break. We'll be right back.